everybody, and welcome to SRM Recruitment's webinar on creating resilient teams. My name is Caroline Watkin. I'm co-founder of 300 Communications Consultancy, and I've very kindly been asked to host today's webinar by SRM Recruitment. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to discuss how you can reduce stress and burnout and build resilience in your teams. And the aim of today's session is to really share some key resilience pillars that you can take away so that you and your team can be healthily productive in 2021. So just some housekeeping to start off with, really important things. If you haven't already, grab a cup of tea, glass of water, pop any children, spouses, pets into a cupboard. And the session is designed to be interactive, so ask questions of our amazing panel via the chat. You can share any key takeaways in the chat as well. And don't worry, we can't see you or hear you, but we can see you interacting in the chat. So let me introduce you to everybody. So as I mentioned, I'm Caroline, co-founder of 300. We help companies get better at talking to their people using digital communications and really helping people to create modern workplaces. That's my co-founder, Phil, there with the nice hairnet on his head. That's to cover his little bald head. Phil's in the chat today, so say hi to Phil. Now, we've probably all worked in organisations where we haven't known what was going on and perhaps been kept in the dark. And that's actually super, super stressful. So if you feel your organisation needs help to create transparent, open and clear communications, then I'd be very happy to help you. So hit me up. Adele is our guest speaker today. She's a wellness in the workplace and resilience consultant. She's also an experienced coach, author, consultant and practitioner. And she focuses on resilience training, which demonstrably increases productivity, engagement, and improves the kind of resilience of your team. And so if what Adele says resonates with you today, she helps individuals and organisations to create more resilience. So do connect with Adele if this resonates with you. And we've got Stuart. So Stuart is co-founder of SRM Recruitment. He's been recruiting finance professionals since 2002, and he's got an extensive finance network. He's trusted advisor to some of the UK's leading businesses, and he leads SRM's executive search practice. Now, SRM are known by their clients as being the straightforward recruiter, and they specialise in finance, accounting, tax and executive search recruitment in London and across the southeast. So if you need any help on the jobs market or recruitment planning for 2021, then Stuart is your man. We are also absolutely delighted that Tamsin is joining us today. So Tamsin is CFO of Ultimate Business Solutions, former CFO of Jamie Oliver Restaurant Group, and she's also worked for companies like BT, Unilever and Merlin Entertainments Group, amongst others. So absolutely delighted that she is joining us. Now, Ultima creates smart infrastructure and software to help businesses to unlock their potential, but very much coming at it from a people's perspective. So if you need any clever automated solutions for your business, then Tamsin is the person to speak to. Okay, so we've all said hello. So say hello in the chat if you haven't already. Hi Emma, hi Gail. Okay, so what we're going to cover in today's agenda, kind of in two halves. So we're going to have a bit of context set in from Stuart. We're then going to go to Adele to talk about what workplace stress is actually costing us and organisations. We're then going to go to ask Tamsin about her reflections on that. And then we're going to go back to Adele for some kind of practical tips and those resilience pillars. And then we're going to open it up to wider Q&A. So that's going to be our session today. So yeah, so say hello in the chat if you haven't already. And also share, is there something in particular you'd like to get out of today's session? Let us know what that is, and we'll make sure that we cover cover that off. Hi Simon, hi Andrew. Also let us know where you're watching from today. I am in very dark North London at the moment. So Stuart, let's start with you. So tell me, what sort of pressures are finance teams facing right now? Give us the context.
So obviously it's been a challenging year right across the board, but I think particularly with finance, given the context of the lead up to what happened with COVID, I think most businesses have run quite lean functions going back to the Brexit vote in 2016. Certainly that was when we set up SRM, and a lot of businesses adjusted and ran quite lean because they were uncertain around where Brexit was going to lead to. And I appreciate that's back on the agenda right now. However, I think with the election last December, businesses were looking to scale up, but right up to that point, I think they've actually been running, quite lean functions because of that uncertainty. So then COVID hit, and we'd certainly seen evidence of a lot of hiring in December, January, and February. Some of that continued in March, but obviously a lot got put on hold whilst everybody worked out, what COVID was and how it's going to impact their businesses. But we did see a lot of that workload go on finance teams. So, when the Chancellor announced about the furlough scheme, for example, the mechanics of how that all works for the finance functions of businesses. So what happened was a lot of that stress was taken on by finance teams, and not many qualified accountants that I've been aware of, were furloughed. I think a lot were, advising their businesses, their organisations, working with their teams to work out how to use any government support that's available. Also, monitoring cash flow, who's going to pay their bills, who weren't, and how they were going to manage that. So the beginning of the pandemic saw a huge amount of pressure on accountants just in general. And we certainly saw that, and whether that was from home or, in an office environment. And now we've kind of arrived where we are now, where people are, still at home. And there has been some resignations that we've seen over the last 3 to 6 months, which in some cases were not expected, and were surprise resignations. So it's been a very turbulent year, and it's been a big learn.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this too with my clients, and actually, obviously, there sounds like there've been very particular pressures on finance teams and having to know where the cash is at all times. Have been playing a kind of crucial role. But I've also seen this with HR and communications teams, been under tremendous pressure, dealing from furlough from a different perspective, dealing with new guidance, crisis comms. So actually, it's not really surprising that we're all a bit stressed and knackered, to be honest. So I think it's a good point to ask a quick poll to find out where everyone else is on the call. So we're going to do a quick poll now. So how stressed are you feeling about work at the moment? Is it manageable? Is it too much? Are you really struggling? So a lot of people saying it's a bit of a blur. Some people saying actually it's busy, but it's okay. So I think this is a good point to have a chat to Adele. And Adele, tell us, what's the impact of all this stress on organisations? Good, thank goodness no one's saying they're really struggling, which is good. So I'm going to hand over to Adele now.
About that. Great. Well, that's interesting statistics, isn't it? So most people, half, have said they're busy, productive and manageable, but there's quite an interesting statistic that have said it's all a crazy blur. That's most of us are feeling like that. We have this inherent threat that is COVID. None of us know exactly how it's affecting our thoughts, and the way that we work has been changed dramatically. So it's not surprising that life does feel a bit busy and a bit of a blur. So I'm Adele Stickland. Thank you so much, Caroline and Stuart, for that lovely introduction. I'm an expert in reducing stress and building resilience, because that is what we all need at the moment. So I wanted to start off with a few statistics, really make sure that everybody understands the benefits of reducing stress. I mean, obviously that feels quite natural and obvious. Nobody wants to feel stress, but why is it important for organizations? Well, here is the statistic which I think is going to blow your thoughts. Mental ill health in the workplace costs UK businesses 45 billion a year. And half of that amount comes from leavism and presenteeism. So leavism is when people are not spending their holidays on holiday, but they're trying to catch up with work. So quiet Joan in the corner, who's finding it very difficult to struggle at work, she is trying to catch up whilst on holiday. It's not good for her mental health. It's not good for her long-term productivity when she's at work. And presenteeism is that never switching off. So Gen Z, millennials, they're quite good at never switching off. They've got this culture where they're always on their phone. I say them because that's obviously not me. So it's always that always on culture that is driving everybody to working so hard. So that 45 billion can be broken down into these three statistics. 7 billion is just simple absences, people just going off sick. Fine, fair enough. That's very tangible. We can measure that. 29 billion is presenteeism, and 9 billion is the cost of staff turnover, which is what Stuart talked about at the beginning. So these statistics I've put together in my white paper. You're very welcome to download it. And these statistics come from, they began at the beginning of COVID-19. So they were at the January, February 2020. So these statistics are going to change quite dramatically. But it's not just a statistical issue. It's about what it does to the company. You're going to lose creativity. If people are constantly stressed, they're not going to come up with the innovative ideas that we all want. Creativity is lost, and eventually it learns to burnout, and burnout leads to long-term absences. So that resulting 9 billion from annual staff turnover is what it costs the UK, is the tangible effect. But what I would love to be is very positive and let you know, as an employer, that your investment in staff, in colleagues, in teams will give you not just 1, but 5% return, 5 ratio return on your investment. So every pound spent, you're going to get £5 back in creative ideas, solutions to problems, just general happy demeanor in the office place is going to make things a lot easier for you. So there is a real return on investment. In some organizations, in some business sectors, that return is as much as 11 to 1. Industries that are very heavy on end user, so things like the IT industry or people that are dealing with the consumer a lot, if you invest in that, then they are going to get 11 times back the investment. Why should leaders be interested in resilience in the workforce? Well, it's part of your statutory obligations. We all have to be involved in that. But more important, thinking about the costs as well. Every time you lose a member of staff, every time somebody goes off long-term sick, you've got that long-term sick costs. But to replace that member of staff costs £30,000 from your bottom line. But the biggest cost is not that, it's presenteeism. It's when people are turning up to work, when they haven't got the ability to answer the questions, to be as productive as they'd like to be, when their minds are elsewhere because there's so much going on. And that cost is 2 to 3 times more than the absence cost. I hear this all the time. I've spoken to lots of companies, especially over COVID-19, and it's the people. It's the people who make the company. Well, now it's time to make that happen. COVID-19 has meant that we have had well-being webinar overload. Customers, employees, staff, colleagues, they're getting lots and lots of support, but it's not it's too much. There's too much going on in the industry. We want something that's going to be pertinent, that's going to be realistic, that's going to be open and honest with your staff. We've seen on an international scale, the leaders that are doing well are the leaders that are vulnerable. This is what's going on for me. This is how I can help you, or how can I help you? So rather than just doing a broadcast, rather than just doing something that's the same for everybody, it's generic, the personal touch, the leadership quality that is very personal and independent, that's going to get much more response from your colleagues and your staff. Some of you might have seen this. This is called the Kubler-Ross change curve. And what this means is that we're going in and out of this all the time. Most of the time it happens in a kind of gentle curve, a cyclical curve, but sometimes it can happen forward and back all the time. So what happens when people come into change is they will go into shock and denial. This isn't happening. And we saw that in lockdown 1. In lockdown 1, everybody was a little bit shocked. We were all very lovey-dovey. We were all clapping and having that shock response. And then we moved into denial. Then it moves into anger. And then we bargain with ourselves, with the world around us. It can go into depression. And then finally it comes into acceptance. And then it grows into change. But what we've seen in lockdown 2, in my opinion, and talking to people, is that shock went quite quickly and we went straight into anger. Now, this is meaning that we're going to have a very different effect in our teams. Dealing with teams is going to be very difficult to handle. So if you know this, if you're aware that this Kubler-Ross change curve is happening, then you're going to be able to help your teams and find out what's going on for them. If you have any insight bombs, if there's anything in this presentation that you feel that you want to explore and you want to talk about more, please drop a comment in the chat box. Caroline will look at them and feed them back to me. So let me know what your big aha moment is. Perhaps you didn't know how much it was costing your organization, the effect of stress. Perhaps you didn't know the price that you're paying in terms of costs of people leaving the business. Stress leads to burnout, and burnout has that effect on your bottom line. So what does stress mean to you? Stress can mean all sorts of different things. It can be being irritable to people around you. It can manifest itself as sleeping difficulties. Perhaps you're having a disturbed night. Tight muscles around the shoulders, constant headaches. They're the stress issues that you're having at one end of the continuum. But at the other end of the mental health continuum, you can have things like depression, suicidal thoughts, all sorts of different issues. So trying to stop that before it gets to burnout, before it gets that far, preventative rather than reactive. So what are the impacts of stress on your organization? My lovely assistant Phil is going to hand out another poll, and we're going to talk about the impacts that you think stress is going to have on your organization. So it could be things like your organization could be reducing things like profitability because of long-term sick. It could be that increased presenteeism because of work overload. It could be that you're aware that stress is going to make performance issues on your teams. People aren't going to be performing quite as well as they would. Or perhaps it's productivity. They're not going to be as productive and they're going to miss deadlines. What are the answers that are coming in? Oh, they're changing all the time. We do like this, do like a bit of interaction. So most of us, oh, I like it. Brilliant. So we're thinking laterally, we're thinking outside the box. Most people, 47%, are saying that presenteeism is the biggest impact of stress on work overload. So that's intangible. That's not something that we can see, that we can put our finger on. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much for your insights. Moving on. Stress. Is it genes or is it lifestyle? This is my favorite conversation. This is my favorite topic. I am an optimist, and as an optimist, I have also looked into the science behind this. Now, old science, archaic science, used to believe that 80% of your lifestyle disease or any issues that you were going to create in life were going to come from your gene pool. So anything that your ancestors have had is going to have that effect on your lifestyle. But we now know, we now understand, modern science is telling us no. Behavioral epigenetics, the study of genes, has told us that it is your behavior. It is the impact of your life, the things that you have in your life that are going to affect your response to disease. So if you can do everything that you possibly can to be calm, to be Zen-like, to have good nutrition, to sleep well, then you are going to create a happier, more vital life. Isn't that good news? It's in your control. It's not down to your genes. It's not down to your granny. It's not down to Aunt Molly. It's down to what you do with your life. And that is way more empowering. So we have the opportunity to evolve. If you keep thinking the same thing, if it's going over and over in your head, then that is going to create a cascading effect of hormones in your body. If you're constantly worried, then that is going to release cortisol. Cortisol is going to is an anabolic hormone, which means that it actually reduces muscle tone in your body, and without that you're going to age faster. So you really want cortisol to be dissolved, and the way to do that is by evolving, making sure that you use your resilience pillars, which I'll talk about later on, to make sure that you are as healthy, happy and vital as you possibly can. This brings me neatly onto the neuroscience of optimism, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this, because I know that people on social media have been talking about the Stockdale response. Does that ring a bell with you? I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me talk firstly about optimism. There are two different psychotherapy tests that were done. The first one was called the newspaper one, and what they did is they had a group of optimists and a group of pessimists. Don't know how they decided that, but they did. They had these two groups of people and they gave them a newspaper. And in that newspaper, they asked them how many adverts are in this newspaper. And the optimists were timed and the pessimists were timed. Now, the optimists found the answer in 2 minutes. The pessimists found the answer in 12 minutes. The reason being, the pessimists literally did what they were told. They counted the adverts and they found the correct answer at the end. The optimists saw the disclaimer at the front page that said, there are 27 adverts in this paper. Closed the paper, had the solution. Optimists look for solutions. They are growth mindset. A pessimist is somebody that is always going to have a fixed mindset. They find it very hard to think outside of the box. So being optimistic is something that's going to help you to be resilient. Now, I asked you about the Stockdale response. So what's happening there is people during prisoner of war camps, people that were over optimistic, people that are saying, oh, we'll be home by Christmas, they actually found it really, really difficult to channel a favorable response. So the idea is that you are optimistic, but you are also aware of your environment and know what's going on. Now, the marshmallow experiment has got a lot to do with 2 to 5-year-old children. And they were offered a marshmallow, but they were told, if you have a marshmallow now, you're very welcome to it. But if you wait 10 minutes, you can have 2. It is the idea that you can be disciplined and you can just hold back on your instant gratification. How valuable is that? Well, they looked at those 2 to 5-year-old children, and the ones that were able to defer their gratification ended up doing so much more in life. It's the idea of being disciplined, but also with your health, with the effect of being healthy and making sure that you defer the things that you love. So just making sure that you trigger the dopamine response. You know that you're going to have a reward at the end of the week, but you make sure you wait till the end of the week rather than doing it every single night. So I hope that's made a little more interesting into why you need to be disciplined in your bliss. So making sure that you've got time for yourself, but also why it's important to be optimistic.
Thank you, Del. That was great. I don't know about anybody else, but I really want a bag of marshmallows now. I don't know if that was the intended takeaway from those insights. Okay, so let's bring Tamsin in here. So Tamsin, have Stuart and Adele's reflections resonated with you? And tell us about the challenges that you and your team have been facing.
Okay, well, first of all, hello everyone. Well, Stuart and Adele both have absolutely resonated with me. So I think if we go back to Stuart's conversation, and Stuart spoke about the challenges that the finance team have experienced. And as a CFO of a technology business, not only am I the CFO, but I also look after IT, legal, and employee engagement, and all of the business continuity planning. So therefore, I suppose when COVID hit in March, the impact that had across my teams, including my finance team, was across all spectrums, from having to get the business, which had been very much an office-based business, prepared for remote working. And that was a huge challenge for so many people that were just used to always going into the office, sitting at their desks, and really trying to have to work through that. Now it feels like that's what we've always done. But if you take all of those steps back, it was a big thing for so many people. On the IT space, we were actually busy about to go live on an ERP solution. So that was a massive, massive challenge for my IT team and across the business. And then in the finance space, the incredible pressure across the entire finance team that was placed upon us, from looking at credit risk, from the multiple scenarios that we also had to work through. What is going to happen? What would be the worst case? What would be this case? I think all of the people who live in that sort of that commercial side were going through spreadsheet after spreadsheet, trying to figure out what none of us knew was going to happen. And then as the core part on finance, having that pressure on everyone of how we were going to manage the cash flow and what it was going to look like across our customers. So a huge amount of pressure on the finance team and that support that they were needing to provide the business. For us in technology as well, we had a massive demand. So we were not only suddenly all working remotely, we also had every single person in the world trying to get orders through to us so they could have a laptop. So it was also very, very busy in that space for us. But then resonating, I think, very much with what Adele said. What was very interesting for us at a board level, we immediately all came together and really needed to just engage completely with each other. And one of the things that I thought was really pertinent to what Adele said was that we split our board into those who are going to be dealing with the here and the now and really have to cope with the business challenges. But then we also split another part of our board into, this is an opportunity. Innovation comes from the most terrible times. So let's be focusing also on how we're going to get through this and how we're going to get through this stronger. And we broke our year out into quarters, with each person, sort of two people in the board, each looking at a different area, so that we could have that focus. But I think, it is definitely been very much around another big part, again, that we've had to focus on. And again, I think, Adele, you absolutely hit the nail on the head, was all around, for us, focusing as a business on lifestyle for our people. And that resonated really well for me. It's been so hard for so many people. And about being able to really help people feel that they can have that conversation.
every webinar to forget to unmute yourself, or else it's not a proper webinar. No, thank you, Tamsin. Yeah, I think that that focus on lifestyle and well-being is really kind of now on organisations' agenda in a way that it wasn't before. So Adele, can you give us some insights on your resilience pillars? What can we do going forwards to make sure that our teams are staying productive after this really busy period?
Yeah, I'd be absolutely delighted. I just want to say, Tamsin, that was really interesting, because so what your teams did was twofold. You had one part of your management team was looking at what to do in terms of getting everybody back to work, so they were doing the productive side of it, but then you also had another side that were looking at the creativity, and that's phenomenal, isn't it? So splitting them up and making sure that somebody was actually looking to the future while somebody else was dealing with what was going on currently. I haven't heard too many organisations do that. I was really impressed. Thank you.
Yeah, me neither. I think a lot of people now want to go back in time and do that.
Yeah. And do that, because everybody was just firefighting, and because they were firefighting, it meant that you had people at the bottom of the trying to deal with consumers, or the front line on the coalface were having a hard time. You had the leadership trying to figure out what was going on from government initiatives, and all the middle managers were being really squeezed. So the fact that you were taking it out from one direction to another is brilliant. So you're looking at the now and you're looking at the future. So I think, to me, resilience is threefold. It's about self-resilience, and we talked about that ability to just defer what you want to do and making sure that you look after your health by deferring things. But also, when you become resilient, your team becomes resilient, and also the organisation. So there's three layers to this, but I want to talk personally today about your 7 resilience pillars. That's my little toolbox. Some of these are going to be very obvious to you, but also be aware, Robert Kildani, who always says, I know, I've heard it all before, these mental shortcuts that we take, don't dismiss them. Listen to your body, listen to what your thoughts are saying. If there's something here, the simplest of things, that's what you will be great to take away with you, because it's always the small habits that make the biggest effect, the continually small habits that you do every day. So it could be as simple as drinking some water, or it could be going outside and walking, but it's the simplest of things that will compound to make the greatest transformational change. When it becomes a habit, it goes from your conscious thought into your subconscious. And I love this little idea of a blank piece of paper, a white piece of paper, and one small dot on that white piece of paper. And that dot is your cognitive conscious thought, and the rest of the paper is your subconscious. So what's going on in your background, whirring away, is what is coming forward in terms of stress and anxiety. So if you can set simple habits that go into your subconscious, the simplest things like drinking water or going outside, they are going to have the biggest effect on your subconscious and on your feelings of tension and anxiety. So I'd like to ask you, which statement best describes your self-care routine? What's in your toolkit? Is it that you don't even think about it, got no thoughts about it, don't even have self-care? What does self-care mean? That's a bit woo-woo, it's not for me. Or you're going to own up and say, it's terrible, I don't do anything, I sit at my desk for 12 hours, I don't even go out. Oh, wow. I don't know if you're telling me the truth, but I'm hearing it's a big, important part of my life. Fantastic. And I've slipped into some bad habits. Well, I think that's probably like all of us. I think my strategy for lockdown has been to earn chocolate, and I'm sure we've all got those strategies in place. But I do try and keep mine until the weekend. But that's great. I really appreciate it. Only 6% have said that I never give it any thought. Some people have said it's terrible, so they're owning up. Thank you for being so honest. 39% are saying it's an important part of my life. Good. Thank you. Well done. I applaud you. And some people have been, again, equally honest and said, I've slipped into some bad habits. And that's fine. It's recognizing it. It's knowing that they're there and making sure that you are aware of them. So as I say, habits are the clue. Doing something small. When we get to January and we all want to do this fantastic diet, the detox, we're going to do a marathon, whatever it is that we set as our objective, it's a little bit overwhelming. If you set in a small habit, something really, really small, and I reiterate, it could be drinking water at your desk, it could be going for a lunchtime walk, that will last. That will take you through the whole year and it will make a huge change to your life. Motivation gets you started, but it's the habit that keeps you going. It goes into your subconscious. You don't even know you're doing it. So how many times do you get up in the morning and brush your teeth? It's a habit. You don't think about it. Let's make water and walking the same thing. I'm just going to ask, I'm going to tease you here. Do you think all employees should receive resilience training? Is it a big yes? Or is it a big no? Is it down to the individual or is it down to the organization? Well, I think it's interesting in terms of the employee proposition value. Employers are looking to make sure that they attract and retain the best staff. So if you make resilience training, stress reduction part of your organization, you are going to attract the best staff. Self-regulation. We talked about this a little with the marshmallows. Now put marshmallows in your head. You're going to be thinking about them. But being aware of your coping strategies. I know my coping strategy is chocolate. I hold my hands up to chocolate, but I'm also aware that I need to moderate and self-regulate. The other way of looking at it is your mindset, being kind to yourself and noticing the way that you talk to yourself. And resilience can be, let me go back one, forgive me. Resilience can be on a scale. And the first scale is awareness. I love the way that we were being so honest. I've slipped into some bad habits. My self-care is terrible. That's fine. But you have awareness. You've looked at what you're doing and you are aware of it. The second idea is that you then become emotionally fluent. You know that you're being aware of it and you can speak, you can discuss it and you can feel, you know, you can own it and name it. And then you have the mental agility to make the choice. Are you going to go and use that coping strategy, or are you going to go and do something else? Are you going to reach for that bottle of wine, or are you going to go for a walk? You have the choice. You have the awareness. You then have the fluency to bring it up and say, this is what it is. I am suffering from stress. And then you have the choice. You have the mental agility to know what to do. And then you can create balance. So that's a big topic. I'd love to talk about that more. Nourishment. Nourishment is one of your resilience pillars. You know that if you're going to go for the sugary treat, you will crash and burn within half an hour. Maybe you won't, but it will have a cumulative effect. Nourishment means making sure that you're eating food that is going to sustain you. Now, why do I put this picture up here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think there's about 12. What I wanted to make the point is that this is marketing. The food that we eat is marketed to us, and everything that we buy, from a car to a washing machine to our food, has marketing behind it. Eating clean, eating right is the best way to nourish your body. So anything that's telling you that it's fortified, that it's going to make you fantastic, loads of energy, it's marketing. I just want you to be aware, not to believe everything that you read on your labels, and be aware of what you're consuming. Water. I've talked about this all the time. A 2% dehydration in your body is going to affect your cognition. It's going to affect the way that you speak. It's going to affect the way that you process your thoughts. Drinking water is very important. Movement. I'd like to think that that was me running across the Millennium Bridge, but it's not. Movement, and movement comes in 3 different aspects. It's not just cardiovascular, which is running. It's not just swimming, which is cardiovascular. It is also strength training. And as you age, strength training and muscle is very, very important for your joints, for your strength, for keeping the aging process at bay. Making sure that you've got enough muscle weights is very important, especially for women. Really important that you keep that going. And the third part of movement is the mind-body connection, the restorative exercise. That is Tai Chi, that is Pilates, yoga, walking, being outside, forest bathing, 3 elements to movement: cardiovascular, strength training, and mind-body. Sleep hygiene, I could talk about sleep all day. You have 5 sleep cycles every single night. And at the beginning of the sleep cycle, number 1, you have deep sleep. It's like downloading your computer. The CPU needs to download. And at the end of the sleep cycle, you have the processing going on. Now, the first part of the night, you are doing a lot more download. And at the latter part of the night, as you wake up, you're doing a lot more processing. Processing means that you're making sense of your day. If you don't have those 5 sleep cycles, you are not going to be as effective at work. You need between 7 and 8 hours sleep. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher both had cerebral cognitive issues from 4 hours sleep at night. It doesn't work. Old school. What challenge are you going to do? We thought we'd have some fun with this. I'd like to set you a challenge. Are you going to perhaps wake up every morning at the same time, or go to bed at the same time every night? Or are you going to join me in a water challenge? Are you going to drink 2.5 litres of water a day? I want you to put your thinking heads on. Let me know, what challenge will you adhere to now? What are you going to stick to for the next 14 days? And of course, you can link up with me on LinkedIn and let me know what your challenge is going to be and what you're going to commit to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those insights. Some great ways there to build your resilience, and don't forget that these challenges are all things that you can do with your team, and there's nothing better than having an accountability buddy to do that with. And we had some nice comments from Paul about his tips that he's put in place to help his team to be more effective. So things like he doesn't let people put email on their work phones, making sure that he's got notifications turned off, and putting his phone upside down, which actually I've been putting my phone upside down, so I can't quite bear to part from it, but that's a good.
Put it up, you mean turn it over? Or put it upside down? I don't understand that.
What's that, Adele?
Sorry, I was just querying the turning it upside down. I wasn't sure how that worked.
Turning your phone that way down.
Oh, right, yeah, that makes sense.
It's still close to you. You still feel connected to it. Yeah, turn it upside down on your desk. Yeah, sorry, I'm with you now. So thank you, Adele, for those great insights. Let's open it up now to the rest of the panel. So let's bring everybody back. So we're going to start with a question for Tamsin, yeah. So I'm gonna ask Tamsin a question about to reflect on what she's heard, and Tamsin, how have you helped your team to build resilience?
Well,
we don't have your camera on, Tamsin, there, so if you just pop that back on for us, thank you.
So a few things have been really key in supporting the team on resilience. I think for me, the first one is all around communication, creating the channels for everyone to be able to communicate and be really open and honest with you on what's going on. And obviously directly with my team, that's been a lot of one-to-one engagement. And then across the business, we've actually done a lot of checkpoints on surveys on how everyone's feeling and what's working well and what we can do better. So that's been a really important part. To then sort of more streamline it directly within my team and the line management of that, I think critical for me has been supporting everyone and being able to prioritize and being able to break down what is being required of them. I think one of the pieces that is the most stressful to everyone is just that sense of overwhelm, and then to be able to support everyone in breaking that down into what is needed and what we need to focus on, I think at least helps create an element of calm for the individuals. I think the other piece for me, and I think this has been a really powerful piece, has been really trying to drive the value of autonomy and empowerment across the business, because I think when everyone feels that they are trusted and that they own the outcome, and it's up to them to figure that out, I think that has an enormous power for everyone. And be it therefore that you know that you're trusted, that you can head off in the middle of the day to go take your dog for a walk, and you know, or if you are trusted that actually you're going to start work that much later because it's healthy for you to be outside doing what you need to do or having a workout or whatever it is. I think when you allow people to believe that they own that, I think that really helps everyone feel that they are in control, and that's a huge part for me on enabling that for my team.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks, Tamsin. We've had a question from Noreen, and I think you've probably spoken to some of her question there. But Noreen is saying, apart from talking and awareness, how can managers practically help their teams to increase resilience? So how can you kind of start those conversations? Adele, do you want to pick that up?
I really like those insights. I thought that was fantastic. So talking and awareness, brilliant. Start with that. Start with pulse surveys. Tamsin has just introduced that, making sure that she's asking her staff, her teams, what's going on. They're going to have the answers. You know, this is not something that's wild and wonderful. There are going to be answers there. It's coming, that's going to make it bespoke and personalized to your team. Making sure there's some kind of collaboration, a quiz. We're looking to work for our social life. I know that nobody wants to admit that, but we do. And so making something that's collaborative. I've been talking to clients who've done, I didn't want to say whiskey tasting nights and wine tasting nights and gin nights and all the booze, but cooking as well, chef, quizzes, challenges, water challenge, you know, something like that that's collaborative, that comes from the teams. So asking the teams questions and the answers will come from them. I love Tamsin's point about keeping everybody calm. Maybe you can do a meditation app together and coming up with that calm solution together. And I also loved point number 5 was autonomy, empowerment, trust and control. And for some companies, some organizations, that is a huge culture shift. You know, we've gone into COVID saying, well, we're going to time people on computers. Well, now we're saying, no, we're not going to time people on computers, because we're going to empower you, we're going to trust you. And that is going to give people ownership and control where they haven't got it in COVID. So I think those 5 points, and 3 of them came from Tamsin, were absolutely brilliant, absolutely superb. Oh yeah, fun scavenger hunt.
Let's bring you in there, Stuart. You mentioned about surprise resignations at the start. How would you suggest that people kind of prevent a surprise resignation?
From what we've seen, I think there's been lots of communication via Zoom and via Teams. There's lots of platforms now for us to collaborate remotely. And however, I think there's a lot of probably surface conversations where leaders maybe aren't asking the deeper questions of how people really are, and you know, are they happy? And really, I think one of the things being more tech enabled is, yes, you are more accessible, but you tend to have probably slightly less time than you would sitting in a room one-on-one with someone, and really understanding how they feel, or taking them out of an office environment and going for a coffee or a drink after work, whatever it might be. That's when people let their guard down a little bit, and I think that's been harder for leaders to gauge how people are truly feeling, because there is although you're seeing someone at the end of a camera, you're not really, you know, going and having the deeper conversations that you might normally would do. So I think it's being conscious and cognizant of that, and making sure you do take some time out to have those conversations with your employees and say, look, how really are you? I know, and you've got to link it in with their personal situation as well. I mean, you know, people have still had babies this year. You know, there's been children working from home. And I think if you can't empathise with that, then you're going to lose people. And you've seen it in the housing market where people are moving houses. They're not afraid to move, you know, and that also has an impact on jobs as well. If people aren't happy, they will, you know, take the initiative and move on if they feel they're not being listened to, or there's no empathy with their boss. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest things that we've seen, where people are surprised because people have been delivering work-wise, and then suddenly a resignation comes up, and it's because, you know, they haven't really dug deep enough.
Yeah. And we had a nice build from Gail there on your point there, and she said ask twice, which I think is a good plan. And we've also had a comment from Nick about Tamsin's point about trust. So he's saying, you know, having that confidence to not worry about being a minute or two late, or, you know, taking the breaks. I think that's good advice. We also had a question from Simon on what's the most effective approach to creating resilience in employees for the long term. Who would like to jump in on that?
Cultural, hasn't it? I mean, we're seeing the shift culturally. You know, both Tamsin and Stuart have said the same things. If we don't, it's not just looking to the next 3 months or the next 6 months, it's looking for that long-term cultural change, and, you know, well-being being part of the agenda, which was set up in 2017, but now it's putting that actually into process. So it's all very well having mental health ambassadors. It's brilliant that people have got webinars and things to listen to, but it's that deeper, longer cultural change that now needs to take effect, and that comes about through conversations, through regular conversations with teams. And it might not always be necessary or vital to do it one-to-one. Obviously, at the moment, that's really crucial. But in the longer term, having constant well-being surveys every 90 days, that's going to pick things up. People are going to start talking to you. But it's no point doing the survey and then doing nothing with it. The teams need to know that those surveys have been acted upon, their voices have been heard. So that's what I would say for my tuppence.
Good answer. And we've had a question from Richard about how do we spot signs that people are struggling with stress so we don't get those surprise resignations?
Do you want me to jump in on that one? I think actually for me, I think it's when people go quiet, and maybe are a little bit more distant than they would be normally. And even if you're reaching out to them, you know, you're getting sort of surface level answers back. And someone has said on the chat here, you know, ask twice, and Gail mentioned it, which I think is really important. And, you know, trying to be open and honest. I think it is harder to do remotely, as I said before, but, you know, I do think you can generally use your sixth sense a little bit to, you know, to gauge how your employees are feeling. And it's not an easy thing to do, but I do think, you know, certainly at different points over the last 6 months, some employees have been, certainly within SRM, you know, some have had things going on earlier in the pandemic. You know, we had a couple of our team off, you know, on maternity and having babies and things, and so, you know, we just left them to it, you know, and said, look, you know, when things have calmed down and in your personal life, you know, then think about work. And I think that the people who tend to struggle are the people that aren't reaching out to their colleagues and, you know, engaging. So it's listening, not just to that person, but also the colleagues around them, because they'll also pick up if someone's not quite themselves, and hopefully then you can intervene.
Yeah, and Tamsin, how do you spot the signs in your team? What do you look out for?
Well, I think I'll start with something slightly different to that. I think, Adele, you touched on it earlier, and I think the way to open up conversations is about being vulnerable for you to start off with. So for me, as the leader, I do a lot of sharing with my team, with the organization around the challenges that I'm experiencing. You know, I mean, when we went back to, you know, the end of March, I was very open with everyone about you know, what were my personal struggles going through the pandemic, whether it be you know, having to juggle the role and homeschooling, and then making sure you're doing X, Y, Z, and all of the other elements that you've got. And I think when you're opening up as a leader and you're helping everyone have that open conversation, it then ensures that you've opened those barriers for them to be able to have that conversation back with you. So, and I think, I mean, one of the important pieces that I've had always in my teams, and I've done this for years and years, is I have quarterly one-to-ones with everyone that falls within my remit, not just my, you know, my obviously my direct reports are far more frequent, but I work on building those relationships so that, in fact, sort of you know what are the touch points, and you can have, when you're having those one-to-ones, you're also sharing on your side as well what's going on and so forth. So each one-to-one is different, and it's separate. It could be around a person's coaching and their development. It could be just having a bit of a chat, and each sharing what is, you know, what's causing a few frustrations in work life. But I think when you create an open conversation, then it's so much easier to be really connected when something isn't working for an individual, and it helps avoid those future surprises.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agree with that. We're getting some really great tips coming in the chat about how people are helping their teams to stay resilient. So we've had some great tips from Elizabeth about setting like official breaks in people's calendars. You know, I've seen a nice challenge of like block out to get out is another nice one that people can do, just to make sure that people do take that time. So yeah, lots of good tips coming in from Elizabeth, also saying about no meetings on Friday afternoon. So could each of you share your one top tip for improving resilience in your teams, or an idea? It could be something that we've heard today that you're going to go and do, or something that we haven't heard.
Who's going to go first?
Stuart, you go.
I think for me, I guess the two takeaways, or my advice would be, as a director in our business, is to have a real honesty and openness that actually comes from the leaders in the business. So if you don't take time to switch off, and when you're on holiday, turning your phone off, or if you're saying, I'm taking this afternoon as annual leave to spend with my family, making everybody clear that you will not be online, and, you know, actually things can wait, right? And you're not going to be connected, because I think that's important for everybody. But if the leaders in the business don't do it, your team are unlikely to follow your example. If they see you constantly online and not switching off, they'll feel obliged subconsciously to do the same. And I really struggle with it, because I always want to respond to clients. I'm all about service and coming back to people quickly. So I really struggle with it. I get my wife to help me with it. And, you know, I really do make a conscious effort with that. So for anybody that manages teams, I'd say that's one thing.
Thank you, Stuart. Actually, we've run out of time. Actually, we had so many great questions. So, Adele and Tamsin, if you want to pop your top tip into the chat, that would be perfect. So it's just down to me to do a little bit of a wrap up. So I just want to say, we've heard today about great openness, communication, being vulnerable, building your focus, and that role modeling of behavior, which is really important. Now, if you would like some more fun and tricks to challenges to do with your team, some of them Adele has spoken about, then we can send you our new Resilient Teams playbook. So just type playbook into the chat if you would like to receive it, to get some more great tips to help you to embed this in your organization. So yeah, so just type in playbook, not Playboy. That's an entirely different process. And if you would like to discuss your hiring strategy and plans for 2021, just type recruitment into the chat, and Stuart can get in touch with me. And if you would like any help with amazing automated solutions, then ask Tamsin. And also, if you want any help with resilience training and to really make an impact on this for long term in your business, then do speak to Adele and connect with her on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Adele, Tamsin, Stuart, and Phil for being in the chat there and keeping an eye on all of the questions. Quickly, last chance to add in if anybody would like follow-ups, if anyone would like the playbook. It's absolutely brilliant to talk to all of you today. So stay safe and stay resilient. Thank you very much.